Hi there everybody and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a little while since I've posted anything. For those of you who follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you would know that I had to take a bit of a break because we moved our family interstate. It was a bit of a rigmarole. There was a lot of drama along the way. Obviously moving from New South Wales, the east coast of Australia, where there's been a lot of flooding, over to good old dry South Australia. So it's definitely been a bit of a hard slog, but we made it. I had to take a little bit of time away from my beloved Sims because my two little tiny humans just needed a little bit of extra support to, settle into a new area and get comfortable. But luckily, they're happy. I'm happy. Everybody's here. We're sorted, so I can get back to some simming. And today we are going to jump straight into a roofing tutorial. I saw somebody post, actually a couple of people post in some of the groups I am in on Facebook, saying that they just couldn't get roofing to work, or how do you get the roof on top, like the ceiling? Why is my room open? Why is there no roof? Lots of things like that. So I am not a lover of roofing. I actually detest it. It's my least favorite part of the game, and I'm pretty confident to say that many, many, many people feel that way. But I thought I would just share with you some of the things that I know about roofing. And the good news is, as with everything, practice, 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 and you're going to see some improvement. All right, so enough out of me. Let's get on with this. I have got just a basic square with a roof on it, stock standard. The first thing we're going to go through is just the arrows and all of this that pops up when you select a roof. Some of you probably going, yes, we know all of this, but if you do, feel free to skip ahead. Otherwise, these arrows are rather useful. Here, obviously, turning it around. This is a copy tool, so if you do a roof, you really like it and you want to place it maybe on another part of the build, you can just copy it and place it. Very easy. And of course, if it's just in the complete wrong spot and you don't want to delete it or shift it, you can just move it out of the way. Okay. These arrows here to the sides and here and also at the top all have the ability to move the roofing. Obviously make it bigger, smaller, or higher or lower. One thing that you may not be aware of is that these little arrows here can change the top of the roof in a different way. So, for example, we grab this and we can drag it down. We can extend it. Or we can make it so that it doesn't hang out quite as far, just to give you different looks. And the same can be said for these, except obviously they go this way. So that's pretty cool. And also, if you hold Shift, it will enable you to move just one side of the roof instead of both moving. So if you wanted one side longer and one side much shorter, you hold Shift while you're doing it, and you can very easily create that effect. Same for this way, you can do one side at a time. Is a cool little feature if you're trying to go for a bit of a different look, something a little out of the box. Lastly, these little circles, little spheres on top, can change the shape of the roof. So you can make it super pointy or you can make it more round. But that's about the extent of it. Unless, of course, you press Shift C. You can see it toggles other spheres. This is where you can get really creative because it allows you to manipulate the roof from several different angles. And you can end up with some pretty unique shapes. So it's all about playing with it and just trying to work out what it is that you want. So for the purpose of this, we'll just leave it like so. That's your basics. The only other thing to really point out is when you raise your roof, you can see that it sort of clicks to certain levels. But if you hold Alt and then do it, it gives you free movement. So if it's not quite lining up to where you want it, just doing it just doing it like this, you hold Alt, you can get it to exactly the spot that you want it. That's the basics on how to shape your roof. They all have it. So even these ones, if you press Shift C, you get the extra spheres to be able to do some pretty cool stuff, and you can manipulate them all the same way. Now, depending on what sort of look you're going for and what style of roofing you're using, you may or may not want to apply a ceiling to a room. Obviously, this room here, if I'm up on the second level, and you can see that it does not have a ceiling. So sometimes that's what you need, sometimes it's not. However, if you do want a ceiling, the way to toggle is going to the second story, selecting that room, and you get this yellow line. Simply click it and it gives you the option to build a ceiling, or if you click it again, remove the ceiling. So that's also useful to know depending on what style you're going for. We have options for the patterns. So obviously, depending on which packs you have, you might have these, you might not. But most of them will have, when you hover over them, this little color palette here. So you do have some options and variations too. And if we click along here, these are the roof trims. So this can just give it that little bit, that little bit extra if you want to kind of spice your build up a little bit, give it a bit more detail. These trims are also good, and you can select from various ones. Some are slimmer, some are wider, and again, if you've got some of the expansion packs, you get a few different options. The only other thing you can add to create a little bit of extra decor is the freezers and exterior trims here. Now, the catch is, with the exterior trims, you have to have a second story floor. So at the moment I don't, and you can see it won't actually let me select. So if you've placed your roof and realized that you've forgotten to put a second story and you want, let's say, a freezer around here, it's a very simple fix. All you need to do is select whatever floor piece matches the room underneath and just outline it so that it's the same as the roof and the floor below. Once you have that, if you go back into the freezers and trims, it will now allow you to select them. Same goes as with the roofing. It'll come up with the color palette, so you have quite a few to choose from. And now it will allow you to put that on there. And it just gives it a little bit of, personally I think it looks a bit nicer when there's freezers on, but it really depends on what style you're going for. It's just an additional thing that you can add to give your build a little bit more. Of course, if the roof pieces are not working for you, or you simply don't want to use them and you're going for a different style, there are other ways to add roofs to your builds. So long as you've got some sort of roof here, you can go ahead and use either platforms to create some sort of roof. This is often a popular thing, especially if you're doing like a modern build, to extend out past the floor underneath. This is one thing you can do. You can raise it up, lower it down. You can add extra platforms in the middle if you need to. That's one other option. You can also use half walls to create the same sort of effect. Some people like to use both. Some Sometimes a half wall like this works just fine as a roof. Sometimes people will raise up the inside to match the top. Yeah, the sky's the limit really with this type of roofing. You can just make it whatever you want. There's no hard and fast rules. And of course there are roof sculptures as well. And again, depending on what packs you have, depends on how many of these you'll have access to, but you can see that there are plenty out there. If you've got base game only, you've still got a few options, so you can add a few things on top to give it a little bit more flair. Okay, so it's all well and good to know the basics, but how does that all actually apply when you have rooms and houses that are shaped like this? Weird and wonderful. Well, the first tip I have for you is don't be afraid to use lots of different roof pieces. Like, just because it looks like that, you would assume maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of roofing. Not necessarily the case. If you want to sort of create something that's a bit different or make it look a bit more standouty, not so basic, then add more roof pieces. Just play around with it. But personally, if I saw this, this is how I would go about it. First and foremost, I would take on the diagonal sections first because they are the worst to try and roof. So I would start there. And using all those tips and tricks we had before, I'm actually going to shorten both sides. And I'm going to bring it in on this side. I'm holding shift to drag that in. Just to give me a little bit of an idea. I'm going to raise that up a fraction, I think. That will do just nicely. Now I'm actually going to copy that and bring it over here because I want it to be the same on both sides. At the moment I'm okay with that. Then we've got these horrid little bits at the back and they can be a bit of a nightmare. So I'm going to go with a hipped roof here and drag it out. Go up a little bit to cover in those gaps. That tidies up that quite nicely. Now let's see. At the front here we've got the little octagonal shaped room. So I'm going to plonk that there. Drag it back so that it fits. And I'm going to bring that down, I think. Which means I'm also going to bring that down and that down. Alright. Drag that in a bit. Not looking too bad. I do not like how that sits. Let's see if I can line that up a bit more. That's nice. I'm going to just delete that and copy it now that it's where I want it. And this of course looks far too high now, so let's bring that back down a notch. Okay, now if I pull that out, oh, we almost line up. What about at the front? We good at the front? Alright, so we are going to come down a bit more until we line up. How's that? Close, pretty close. Pretty close. Alrighty. Now, of course, this is where it comes to don't be shy to use more than one roof. You can layer them, and sometimes it can give a pretty cool effect, like you can see here. We might bring that down a bit, like that. Very nice. And I'm going to drag it back in line. And we might use this half gabled roof to just finish off this bit here. Now, of course, that is far too high. So we're going to lower that right down, drag it back, and I don't want those bits sticking out, so I'm going to hold shift and drag that side in alone so that it doesn't stick out. Perfect. And there's a basis of roof. Of course, you could shape that however you like. If you chose to use these, you could round it out a bit. Plenty of things to do. So always remember, lots of layers of roofing and also different shapes and different styles. I know it's scary to start with, but if you don't try, you'll never know. Thanks for watching my video, guys. If you enjoyed what you saw and you want to see more, make sure you subscribe and also click on that notification bell so you don't miss out on new content. You can also check me out on my socials.